Okay, we're glad to welcome you back. This is our discussion segment. And what are we going to look at today? Strengthening the public service is what we have as the topic of the day. Before we go on, let's quickly introduce the guests in the house. Theophilus, why are you looking at me that way?
I want to ask you if you're a public servant.
No. Okay, we have a guest in the house, and he is Chief Dike Ndulue. Chief Dike Ndulue is a former PAMSEC Minister of Information. Am I right? But I know you have moved from one ministry to another.
Moved from one ministry
and that's why I'm surprised seeing only Minister of Information.
Yes.
So tell us more about that, your movement.
My movement, I started with the Ministry of Works as a permanent secretary in 2006, then to Ministry of Environment, then to the Ministry of Information, and finally I retired from the office of the Deputy Governor.
So now
Have
retired.
you retired?
Yes.
Are you tired?
You don't look it.
Are you retired? Are you not tired?
Well, you know, in the service, it's either 35 years of service or
65.
chronological age of 60.
60, okay.
Yes, whichever comes first.
You must step aside.
Yes.
Because that simply,
Step
it doesn't
aside.
mean you are tired. You just step aside.
Thank
Perhaps
you very
waiting
much.
for a higher office.
By His grace.
We're glad to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
You're
I know you
welcome.
used to be a PAMSEC, and
Yes.
then we worked very well with you then. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we say we want to look at strengthening public service, and when we know that public service is no doubt one of the prestigious jobs of the old, and it's as old as any government of a nation, because you start with them. And then when you talk about strengthening the public service, it simply means that the bolts and nuts are no longer where it's supposed to be. Do you agree with that?
Obviously, it's the service is what it is, and it's still there. But the human factor, the human capital, over time has changed. And that is why the word strengthening implies that there is a reduction in the quality of service and the expectations from the service of the service. In this regard, one would ask, what are the factors that contributed to this downward trend of events in the service? Well, I think we'll still dwell on that, but let me not preempt.
Okay, I wanted to ask you before you conclude, please. I want to, if you say that the quality of the staff have changed, whose responsibility is that, or whose fault?
It's global. It's not
global.
peculiar. It's global because expectations of one generation, in most cases, differ from expectations.
Why
of
don't you departmentalize it? Global in one sense, but coming back to where we are talking about the service itself. Is it the worker, or is it the government, or is it who that makes the quality to have dwindled?
Well, you should understand that the service is part of the world and part of human activities. So, as things change in all sectors, of course, that change will obviously impact on the service. In education, for instance, in other areas of human endeavor, there is this philosopher who said that fragmentation of knowledge into narrower fields of specialization has made knowledge itself very boring and redundant. In the past, when you are a learned man, not in the terms of legal term,
Okay.
but in terms of world or worldly affairs, if you are a philosopher, you must be learned enough in philosophy, in medicine, in engineering, in science, even in arts, in its entirety. And that's, they say, that's an educated man, that's a knowledgeable man. Like the likes of Leonardo da Vinci, but I guess that is not what we're here to talk about. I'm only saying this to underscore that the changes in all realms of human endeavor.
Okay, this
also
one affects
affected
the other
the
one.
service.
But if we look at the changes in education, because I know that recently that they say that Nigerian graduates are not employable. So are you saying that when the universities shun unemployable students out of the universities, that if it affects the public service? Is that what you're trying to say?
to an extent, but that is why there are programs and projects for retraining, because for induction and things like that, so that the person will fit into the service and learn the rules, the regulations, the procedures of doing things in the service. So, I would say, without mincing words, that the civil service is not isolated.
Okay. Now, being a little bit particular now, a public servant contributes impactfully to government, to governance. How?
The essence of government before now is to provide, let me go back to the time of the colonial era. The essence of government at that time was to generate revenue, to collect revenue, and provide paltry social services. Then the civil service was departmentalized, works, health, and so on and so forth. There was little social service. But over time, especially after in 1960, when Nigeria gained its independence, things changed. The civil service provided the platform for these changes and to cope with the enormity of the change.
I'm interested in that change. Why this change? And that change, is it helping governance?
Yes. Like I said earlier, during the colonial era, it was one side, it was lopsided. They were interested in the revenue generated from this country. But after the independence and the luck, I'll call it good luck, of gravitating within such a short time to a republic, there was need to expand the people, to expand the programs of government precisely, so that it will be people-oriented. And the civil service provided this platform in that we now had the departments that were then changed to ministries.
Changed to ministries.
Were changed to ministries and other non-ministerial establishments.
No, but by way of comparison now, yes. How will you assess the public service of today, looking at what it used to be?
Well, frankly speaking, the public service or civil service, whichever, they are used interwovenly, interchangeably. Today's civil service is better. Is better.
Yeah, we just saw some civil working with computer, which I'm sure
the tools or tooling in the service today is by far improved.
Yeah, just look at them.
The communication
over time they were using with absolute equipment, typewriters. This time around, computers are enhanced.
Actually, when I was a neophyte in the service, the type of typewriter and the toolings we had, they've all gone.
They are no more there.
They are no more there. Sometimes you have to do your computation with scale rule. I don't think there's anybody using that
apart
now.
From instruments of work.
Yes.
I mean, this is that they used to work.
Yes.
What other area? In the area of corruption, will you say that the civil service of today is better than that of yesterday? Yesteryears.
In the area of corruption, it's
because he said that the civil servant uses pen to.
Well, that is a general belief. It may be true. It may be true. But I don't think it is something we can talk so much about here, in that in all sectors, things have gone on one hand bad and improved on the other hand. So I believe in the broad picture that things will get better and things will improve, in the sense that life is hope and hope is everything.
Okay.
Corruption-wise, there was corruption in the old service.
Really?
Yes.
Because you mentioned it that the whites then were interested in making money from this place. And
exactly.
That's
milk the
a level
cow
of corruption.
until it dies.
And these days, who is interested in siphoning money from
Money.
Well, these days,
the whites again?
no.
Okay.
There are this human factor that you can't deny. You can't completely have even in the church. So you can't completely deny people of what they want.
Okay.
Some people are trained to be pious, to be straightforward, which is what the service encourages by way of reward, promotions, and things like that. But others feel like having a field day
Okay.
with the opportunity or whatever opportunity they have.
Okay,
okay, let's look at
But I have actually wanted us to look at manpower too.
Okay.
Of those days and these days. Because I know that in those days, I see no one in the civil service, you know, for their wives. And as I also what about Motumba? You have to go, but this day, I don't know whether it's like that. Some people have worked for over 20 years, you don't even have a bicycle, not to talk of cars.
Yes, in the days you were talking about, if a civil servant decides to change his car, a trader will rush and buy and pay to buy. Today, is the reverse is the case.
Is the case.
If a trader decides to put away his car or to sell, the civil servant rushes to buy.
What happened to us?
The reason is not far-fetched. I don't intend to vilify any class, but the politics of today and the politics of yesterday are different. And that is why the political class, they've not only grown in number, they've not only been more assertive, they have become more desirous.
Okay.
And that can be reflected in the remunerations of both the civil service and the political class.
Okay.
That an aside, there's this proverb in Igbo, "Na newu na ata agbara, onwe ya na-enye anya n'ọnụ." If one is properly remunerated, if one is properly trained, conscientized that what comes around goes around, but negatively, and you have to account for these things.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay, now you've you've seen and worked with past administrations. Now let us now talk about our own present governor, Willie Obiano, and then as far as public service is concerned.
Yes.
Can you assess it? We have stories of some states owing workers and then not giving them much, manpower and, of course, other lages to really encourage them. Do you think over time that the Obiano administration is doing well in terms of strengthening the public service?
Well, the Obiano administration is unique. Why I say this is unique is because we need to ask ourselves, how many state governors have vision and mission? You see, formally, when the minister comes up with a policy which the civil service helps him to formulate, the civil servant has a religious conviction and belief that this policy must be actualized. Even if he doesn't like it, he has no other choice than to implement that. Now, vis-a-vis the incumbent or the present dispensation in the state, he has not only vision and mission, but he has made it crystal clear by training and retraining. I remember somehow I was in my final year when this dispensation came on. And I attended some...
Final year of service.
Yes, final year of service. So I attended some...
So you benefited, actually.
I benefited. But like somebody who is on the way out, all I could do was put in my handover note all the things that will sustain continuity in what I was doing policy-wise. So the man is a typical example of leadership. And you can see that the civil servants who are lucky to be in the service now and still running are, by any standard, the best amongst civil servants in other states. Apart from those in the federal service, there's no state we can compare with Anambra State.
No state?
Yeah.
You can't compare with Anambra State.
He exudes that charisma. He exudes that charisma in his talk, in his guide, in his undertakings, and man-to-man relationship. He believes, which makes him pragmatic and unique, that the human factor is the center, the pivot for all transformation.
I remember when he said, Nana,
that's his philosophy. And to be honest with you, what they have a guest in the house, Dike Ndulue. Dike Ndulue is a chief. Perhaps
an engineer by profession.
An engineer
by profession and also a chief. So can I get a chief engineer?
Engineer Dike Ndulue.
Engineer Dike Ndulue. Dike Ndulue.
Exactly.
As I will miss that name. It was very popular when you were in our ministry.
Minister of Information then.
Okay. Welcome, sir. We still welcome you to the house.
Thank you.
Now, there's this nagging issue between the two, these two names, public service and civil service. Are they the same? Because sometimes they refer to those of us in the agencies and the parastatals as public servants, and then those of them in the core ministries as public servants. Civil servants. So is there any difference? Would you just clarify that for us, please?
Well, let's look at the genesis, in the sense that the civil service, as we inherited from the colonial masters, provided limited social services. They were on the, under the umbrella of the executive. Of course, they are still under the umbrella of the executive. Along the line, talking about the expansion of the service, ministries were formed, and extra-ministerial establishments, including parastatals, of course, by the military now. The parastatals were created by decree, by the ministry, by the military. And with that expansion, you find out that the extra-ministerial establishments were put in place or established to interact, to have a kind of business orientation, to deal with the public more than the civil servants who are in the ministries.
More or less in the offices.
More or less in the offices. And that was the genesis that brought about public and civil.
And civil servants.
But they are used interchangeably, and whichever way you look at it, they are on the ticket of the governor, of the executive.
Are they?
Yeah. Yes.
But oftentimes...
Some parastatals or some non-ministerial establishments, because of the need to generate revenue, to provide certain services at a subsidized, not subsidized, but at a commercial rate, they are asked to fend for themselves to an extent. And what government does really is
to give them subvention.
Subvention occasionally.
I see.
Yes, but that of the civil servant is 100%. This remuneration is 100%.
So in effect, you are saying both public servants and civil servants are the same.
But not, no, but from to an extent, because from what you explained now, public service was created to do what civil service could not do.
Yes, to an extent, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Go ahead, Theophilus.
Okay, now let's look at how does a civil servant or a public servant impact on the masses? And then by so doing, how can he be encouraged vis-a-vis the challenges he has as a public servant or as a civil servant?
Yes, talking about this a measure of the quality of the service, because most establishments, most ministries do have vision, should have vision, mission, strategies, outcome, and factors like that, which you can use as benchmarks to determine if the ministry is actually living up to its bidding. Ditto, the civil servant. And on these factors, you'll be able to determine. Take, for instance, or globally, or generally, let me say so, if a ministry, or if the people do not perceive the government as being proactive. You remember in the past, if you write a letter to the ministry, let me not say the minister or to the commissioner, to government, one thing you'll be sure of is a reply with respect to your letter or what you've been asking for. And it is one benchmark to know whether the ministry or the establishment is alive. But these days, you don't have such.
We don't have
people
such.
have feelings. So, from the product of the service, of the civil servants, of the ministry, of arms of government, you will know whether they are up.
Well,
now, in terms of encouragement,
yes.
Motivation is the ultimate thing. Because even the creator, if he does something for you, and you go for Thanksgiving, and you're happy, he will do more.
And that's exactly what I want to ask you now. Yeah. Having seen that since the inception of this government of Chief Willie Obiano, there has been salary increases, Christmas pledges, end of the year this and that to all the civil servants. Yes. How do you now advocate that they reciprocate this kind gesture?
One good turn deserves another.
Okay. Interesting.
And I think in the 5 years running of the dispensation in this state, we've not heard of strike. We've not heard of labor agitation. We've not heard of mudslinging and name-calling and throwing of mud or stones or pure water. It shows there's harmony, there is peace. And to reciprocate his good gestures, I'll advise they become more productive. They're already productive, but more productive. And uphold the peace, security, and all the things government provide for the people, including developmental, that's infrastructures.
Okay, generally, strengthen the public service. Yeah. Whose honors is it? Is it this public servant or is it the government?
In 30 seconds, please.
Okay. The flagship of the service, and that flagship of the service is the office of the head of service.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As a retired officer from the state, you don't have any regrets?
At all.
Thank God for
At
you.
all.
Okay. Thank you. And that's how we have seen it in this segment of the program, Good Morning Anambra, as we looked at strengthening the public service.